Welcome to Third Fridays, the monthly legal talk show from Lois LLC featuring attorney Christian Cison. This is the original forum in which real attorneys discuss workers' compensation issues, share their opinions, and engage in colorful conversations. This show showcases diverse perspectives of attorneys handling workers' comp cases, including case law trends, practical litigation strategies, and hot topics. Here's your host, Christian Cison.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the March 2023 edition of the Third Fridays podcast. My name is Christian Cison, and I guess I'll start off by correcting myself from the previous month's episode where I fell in line with most of the world in the early stages of 2023 by quoting the year as 2022. But, 2 months in, I can now say that I am learning that the year has actually switched to 2023, and I hope you all can forgive me. But last month's episode was really great. I talked about a new landmark game changer case in the state of New Jersey. I had two attorneys on to talk about a medical provider application that involved a treating physician who had been paid by a New York workers' compensation carrier for treatment rendered in New Jersey, but then filed a lawsuit in the New Jersey Workers' Compensation Division to have excess fees added under a usual and customary standard. We obtained a decision from a judge who looked at our briefs, our pleadings, and decided that there was a jurisdictional question that wasn't answered by that treating provider, and we believe that it's going to change medical provider applications in that great state of New Jersey. So if you haven't listened to it, it is one of our most highly listened to episodes of the past year. And I'm not saying just the last 2 months, the last 12 months. So take a listen if you want to come on board the train. We're certainly running through medical provider applications based on this great decision. Today and this month, I've got two great guests, which is always interesting for me because I'm so used to talking with people I see every day. And I had a great email from a representative from this great organization that I've gotten to know in the past few weeks and do my own research. So I'm very happy to welcome Robert Wilson and Mark Pugh to the Third Fridays podcast. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So to announce everybody and introduce you guys, Robert or Bob, you're the president of WorkCompCollege, and Mark, you are the provost of WorkCompCollege. So maybe I'll start with you, Bob, as El Presidente, the head guy. What is WorkCompCollege? What should not only my attorneys and my paralegals know about it, but our clients and our prospects that listen to me, yabber on about workers' compensation every month. What's important about you guys?
Well, thanks, Christian. I'm happy to do that, although I have to say I'm stressed to learn that it's actually 2023 because I'm still working on things that I wanted to get done in 2022. So that is a little distressing to know.
Resolutions are a tough thing. We don't need to. We can pace ourselves, right? So we just set goals that are achievable. That's what really we can only be honest about, right? Achievable goals and reaching them.
That's true. Well, actually, we had a pretty productive 2022. WorkCompCollege.com was founded last year, and we went live on November 17th. It is a virtual training program designed for professionals in the workers' compensation system. And what is unique about our program, I think, versus some of the others that are out there, and there's some very competent programs out there, they're all very technical in nature. Ours is really the first one whose foundation is based on the biopsychosocial understandings, what we call workers' recovery, whole person recovery management, that really is trying to work with professionals to get them to better understand the importance of communication, both in verbal communication, written, listening skills, understanding the emotional intelligence of the injured workers that we manage, and to really understand, as my friend Mark Pugh coined, I'm going to steal his phrase, I have to give him credit, to understand what's going on between the ears of the injured workers is as important as the physical injury they suffered. And we've developed a program that Mark will tell you more about that really encompasses, again, his phrase, Work Comp 360 picture, to help professionals not only understand how better to interact with these injured workers and understand the processes that are driving some of the results and sometimes often negative results, but also to understand where in the industry your position actually fits, why you're important, what your position means. You folks, we were interested in your podcast. You're a defense firm, and there are times probably where you deal with cases where adjusters maybe could have handled something that's slightly different that would have made your case a little easier coming in. And we're trying to really make sure that we can reduce some of those mistakes that can cause problems. And a lot of those mistakes are based on not understanding where people are coming from and what's going on in their lives outside of the injury. Mark, did I misspeak on that at all?
No.
Oh, thank you, Mark.
I feel like I think Mark was pausing for that effect where he wanted us to laugh at that answer, but right,
just pause, absolutely.
Right.
Dramatic effect, really.
Yeah, it's there has been a lack of really good quality training, systemic, strategic training for especially claims adjusters and claims examiners that was very prevalent 5, 10, 15 years ago, but now it's kind of, we'll hire anybody that can fog a mirror and we'll have them dump them into a pool of 250 claims. And we're going to hope that on the job training, some mentorship, different things might happen and might work with that. And there's a lot of great training programs in there, but systemically, it's not really what it used to be. And so we really felt like that the combination of the needed hard skills and soft skills in order to recruit and retain talent is really important. Because we've got a lot of empty seats. I don't know about your firm, Christian, if you've got all the attorneys that you need and the paralegals that you need and all the staff that you need. There's a lot of restaurants that don't have that staff. There's, there's pretty much every business out there, and work comp is not exempt from that. So how do you bring people in order to to fill those seats and to fill those skills? You really need to have a really good mechanism to and compelling argument for them to join and we used to call it industry. Bob and I have always called it industry or system. We've gravitated towards calling it the workers' compensation ecosystem, which we think is a better definition because there's so many stakeholders that have this symbiotic relationship with the injured worker in the middle. And how do you create a compelling argument for people to come in and join us and give them the proper training so that they can feel equipped to do that? And that's kind of the solution that we're trying to provide, is that Work Comp 360 that's infused with both hard skills and soft skills.
I want to clarify a point, if I could, that Mark made, and related to some of the quality of the people in the industry. I have found there are really good people in this industry, a lot of really good people. So when he mentions that they're looking to hire anybody with a pulse, we're not indicating or trying to indicate that they were just staffed with a bunch of desperation hires. The reality is we have really good people who are stuck in a process-intensive, heavily regulated industry. And some of the things that have developed over the last 15 or 20 years are not really anybody's fault specifically. It's just the way the system has evolved. Whether, when I first joined the industry, my background, I was president and CEO of the website WorkersCompensation.com for almost 23 years. And when I first joined the industry, we really there were systems with some pretty effective training. After the dot-com bubble burst in 2000, a lot of that investment in income went away for the insurance companies. A lot of things got cut. Some of the training programs were the first to go. And people did revert to a method of just stealing each other's employees. Now we're running out of people to steal. I know this is an audio podcast. People can't see me. There's more gray on my face and on my head than I would really care to admit. And people that are marks in my age, we turn around, there's no one behind us to take our place. And part of that is because we've evolved through consolidation and an elimination of some of the training and responsibilities adjusters and claims professionals used to have. Now a lot of it's being outsourced. And as a result, we haven't become an industry that's attractive to bring people into. And that's another part of our message, is we really want to rebrand and refocus what the industry does. You talk to someone today who's young. I'm 62 years old. When I came out of college, it was get a job, suck it up, do your job. If you don't like your job, too bad. Support your family and do your job. That's the way we were raised. Today, kids coming out of college, they want a noble purpose. They want to make a difference. They want to feel they're having an impact in the world, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you ask a kid today about the workers' comp industry, they're going to tell you we're a heavily regulated, paper-shuffling industry that does nothing but speak legalese all day. The reality is, if we do it properly, if we do things properly, what workers' comp really is an industry that restores broken and shattered lives. We repair, we restore function and operating capacity to people who have endured a tragic incident in their lives. That's a pretty noble purpose. And if we could position ourselves and market ourselves that way, we'd be able to attract more people in. So I think that's a long clarification of a single point, but I think it's we're really trying to work to create better outcomes for people through this system.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point because sometimes I've been doing this for so long, but anytime I say what I do, right, that's measured in the responses that I get, right? Whether it's at a cocktail party or, even, my wife will sometimes ask questions, but it's like, well, I'm not sure that that's really what you do. And so it is from the perspective of the person who's outside the industry that should shape really how we market to everybody. Mark, you mentioned, companies and businesses having difficulties with staff everywhere. I feel lucky enough that we're always making these growth hires, right? We have classes of attorneys and paralegals starting every single month. And that does present us with this opportunity to really invest in the person. We were a small operation that started on September 15th, 2015, after we broke off from a larger firm to set up our own shingle. And here we are 7-8 years later where we're making these changes to really ensure that the people that we see every day are actually creating that nobility that you're talking about, right? In a volume industry that's so tough and so unforgiving, especially in a tough state like New York and New Jersey, for the defense perspective, we always make sure that we're pursuing the right ends. And I say this sometimes on other episodes that really the goal of this entire system is to accept the claims that are compensable and deny the claims that are not. And I think that's part of our analysis that sometimes, I'd say, they say, Christian, what do you do? It's like, I represent some really big national self-insureds, that names that you definitely know, that you interact with every day. You purchase their product, you purchase their service. And when I say that, sometimes people say, well, you represent the big bad employers and these large insurance companies that have these deep pockets. And really, part of our job, too, is saying that certain claims are compensable. Certain claims should be settled because this was legitimate. And I think that the investment in the whole person or what's between the ears, I would agree that it's probably overlooked just out of volume, right? It's also a system where it takes one bad egg to get by and get a six-figure settlement or a six-figure award that goes and tells his or her friend or his or her family member, this is what I did, and then the chain starts. So in your program, Bob and Mark, like what would you say is the theme you want to give to people who attend the program to say, even in this volume-oriented industry, how do I have the time to stop and think about what's in between the ears? Like, how do you make that challenge more readily acceptable? To make it, maybe it becomes a resolution that they say they can achieve. What themes do you push so that people are in line with what you want to promote and market?
That's lined up right with Mr. Pugh there. I think I'm going to let him answer that. I'm happy to take a shot at it, but I think he probably, that's right up his alley.
Well, we're creating a certification out of whole cloth, which we've done with the Workers Recovery Professional or WRP certification, is challenging because it doesn't have any tangible value right off the bat. And so what we have done is we've surrounded ourselves with a board of trustees, with deans, with faculty, advisors, clients that have helped us form this program. And it's interesting that several of the initial clients that have bought this are looking at this to completely re-engineer their corporate culture. Yep. And so there are a couple of the companies that are doing our curriculum together. So one in particular is requiring each of their employees to take 2 courses, predefined which courses they're going to take that week, and then they meet on a Friday afternoon and they discuss as a group what they found out about that, the notes that they took, what policies need to change, how they need to communicate internally with one another better, how they communicate with the injured employee, how they connect and communicate with the treatment provider. So, we've created curriculum amongst 8 different schools: humanities, legal, claims, medical management, risk management, return to work, stakeholders, regulators, legislative, kind of the whole picture, that WorkComp 360. And we've created this content. And it's been interesting to see the creativity that the people who buy this have embraced that and go, okay, there are some that are doing it by themselves, and they may be kind of the Lone Ranger in their employer. They're the only one who has taken this, and they may be that seed that helps germinate maybe this culture change. But it's been interesting. Others have been creatively embracing and going, hey, this is an opportunity for us to talk together from C-suite down to, the people that are handling the mailroom, from customer service to attorneys to clinicians to claims adjusters, examiners to supervisors. How are we going to do this differently? How are we going to your point, Christian, how can we take a pause? How can we skip a beat and go, how are we going to do this differently? Do I need to not talk as much and listen more? Do I need to understand what empathy truly is so that I can put myself in the eyes and the feet of that injured employee and kind of understand they don't have great medical literacy. Maybe they don't have a great supporting cast at home that's a positive affirmation that goes to social determinants of health, which is a really big subject now. Maybe they don't have that, and I need to understand. I need to slow down. I don't need to talk in terms of acronyms. I need not to use 75-cent words. I need to use 25-cent words. I need to ask them if they understand. That kind of stuff will embolden them and empower them and give that injured employee agency where they feel like they now kind of own this. Because a lot of times injured employees end up being very passive. They're like the passenger in the car. They may actually be in the back seat like driving Miss Daisy, or they may be in the trunk. They have they don't have any guidance. They don't have any idea as to where this is going. They don't feel like they're empowered to guide this or direct this. They're just along for the ride. And what we'll get better results from is that injured employee actually feels like a part of this process, that they own a part of this process. And by virtue of that, and I know this may not necessarily go well with your firm, but one of the things that happens is that they don't perceive the need to have representation. So they don't get a plaintiff's claimant, attorney, because they don't feel like the supervisor doesn't like them. They don't feel like the employer is trying to figure out a way to play the game. They don't feel like the provider is trying to cram stuff down their throat. They feel valued. They feel heard. And so that litigation rate is going to dramatically reduce the cost, the friction, probably increase the return to work, decrease the duration of disability. So it's been interesting as we put this curriculum out with the mindset that we wanted to give this WorkComp 360. Everybody's looking at it from a different perspective and implementing it in their own unique way that makes the most sense to them. And that's what's been fun. We've been having ongoing discussions with these folks and go, gosh, never thought about doing it that way, but that makes all the sense in the world.
Maybe the claimant's attorney actually, or the claimants are scared of getting representation because they don't want to be put in the trunk. I guess, maybe the claimant's attorneys in a lot of these states have some explaining to do. So make me glad to be on this side of the fence.
Yeah, really.
Go ahead, Bob.
I think if I could, because your question was really poignant. It was really relevant. And we've talked about what happens when someone goes through this process and learns these methods, and we've had some great response from early people who've gone through the system. 20-year employees, 25-year professionals said this changed the way I view my job. It's changed the way I look at things. That's a great compliment to us. But what happens when those people get put right back into a system where they've got 200 files and they're putting out fires all day, and the culture you alluded to, the process that's developed, how do we overcome that? We do recognize we've got a long battle in terms of changing culture in the industry. But one of the things we've done, this is really a community-driven effort. Mark talked about all the faculty. I am amazed, and I would encourage people to go to WorkCompCollege.com, look up the deans, look up the trustees, and look up the faculty. Just review and see who's actually stepped up. No one's getting rich doing this. Most of them have actually are
just for the love of the game.
Well, it is, and there's a little bit of money involved for them. We pay them for their time, but most of them, 57% of them so far, have donated it all to charity, mostly to Kids Chance, which is a workers' comp charity. I don't know if you're familiar with Kids Chance.
I am, yeah.
It's a great deal to be able to do this. We're sending thousands of dollars to charity. It's a great deal, but we want to develop a community, and after they've got the certificate, we do have an advanced training and education center that's coming out that will have an alumni association component that people can actually get that support. And frankly, I'm not afraid to promote some of the insurance companies that have adopted this as employers of choice. If people are out looking for work, that's a company I'd be happy to recommend, because they are recognizing that there's a better path. And we often talk about, improving outcomes for injured workers. And you listen to us talk, you listen to our literature, we're always talking about improving outcomes for injured workers. The dirty little secret is, if we improve outcomes for injured workers, we're also improving outcomes for their employer. And in terms of lower costs, as Mark said, lower litigation, shorter indemnity periods, less medical costs. If we can do that sort of less disability, that's, our tagline is better outcomes, better communities, better world, because we don't live in a vacuum. If we can improve someone's life, the quality of someone's life, we're improving the quality of the community in which they live, theoretically. And so, but it is a real challenge. This is a long shift to, I think, a better world. As I said, a lot of us are getting ready to retire, and we want to leave a better industry than what we found. And so that's kind of been our motivation.
Yeah, I think it's a very ambitious goal for sure. But that's kind of what every industry needs, or every ecosystem, to use your term. And I think about how, what we do from a defense perspective, it's no one walks in to, our office and knows everything, right? Even the experienced practitioners from an attorney or paralegal level that have had workers' compensation experience, they soon realize exactly why I wake up and want to go to work as soon as possible, because I'm not so much obsessed with being a workers' compensation attorney. I kind of tell my staff and my attorneys that I'm obsessed with being a workers' compensation case handler, right? Where we're talking not necessarily about having to fight every single thing, but fight the ones that are worth fighting. Like what is that common sense approach that we can take to any claim and decide, if we just leave our legal brains out of it, what is really going on here with this particular case, with this particular claimant, with this particular doctor? Is this something that should be happening? And, sometimes it takes a long time to get to that process. We might need to visit our employer's location and sites to say, like, okay, this is how it works over here. These are the apparatus that you use. These are the people that hear about, the reporting structure for certain accidents. And, I have a friend who listens to the podcast that jokes that, if I ever get really, really famous, that there's going to be a drinking game for every time I say the words "defend from day one," because that's my tagline. It's not as uplifting, I guess, as better ecosystem, but essentially, if we investigate accidents from the get-go, then we have a better chance of coming to an accurate conclusion of whether or not these claims are compensable or not. And I think from what you're saying, Bob and Mark, in terms of putting a system together where someone can learn and then implement, it's got a very long-term, aspect. It's like future focused, as opposed to what I think sometimes the industry gets too caught up in is, what's the next case that I have to work? What's the next email I have to respond to? What's the next medical bill that I have to pay? And I think it's an ongoing battle. That's why I think what you're doing, I think, is very ambitious. Not to say that it's a bad goal. It's certainly a worthwhile goal, but it's very ambitious because the premise of the industry or the ecosystem itself generally pushes all the practitioners and the stakeholders to just do the next thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think, it's a challenge that you're probably going to continue to face and maybe never actually fully say, we've gotten everybody in the industry to realize that the long-term aspect is way more important than the day-to-day. Do you think that it's possible? I mean, I guess I'm asking a question that I feel like you're going to say yes to, but right? Otherwise you wouldn't be here.
If I said no, I might as well just retire now.
Right. You'd be like, no, click. No. We're done with the episode.
No, we're done. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Attorneys never ask questions you don't know the answer to already, right?
That's a great point, Mark. That's a great point. You'll never hear a cross-examination question out of my mouth where I don't already know the answer. So that's a great point.
That's right. Well, I think one of the things that has been the most heartening for me in this process, and you're right, it is a challenge. We're doing something that's not been done. But one of the things that has been the biggest surprise, over the years I've gotten to know a lot of the regulators, become friends with regulators. I have a certain respect for them because they are actually people who are quite often appointed by their governor, thrown into a highly bureaucratic system that's already well established. Some of them are not experts in comp when they get there, and they are at ground zero of trying to keep all their stakeholders happy. And one of the things that's been really positive is the response we've received from regulators. We've had multiple agencies and people from agencies tell us, anything you need, let us know. If we can help in any way, let us know. We've got the former regulator, Abby Hudgens, just retired from the Tennessee Bureau of Workers' Comp. She was the administrator in Tennessee system. She's one of our trustees and one of our deans. But we have 2 states that actually have employees in our system now assessing it for use for eventual certification or licensure in their state, which is a huge compliment to us if they're able to proceed and pursue that. But it tells us they're recognizing there's a need for a different way, that we are not in all these cases getting the outcomes that we really should be getting. And it's and you're nailing it in terms of why. We are so process driven. We're always looking for what the next task is on the list. When I speak at conferences, I will ask claims adjusters, when you get a new file on the desk, what's the most important overriding goal? And inevitably someone says, close it. They want to close that file. But close it to what end? Did we close it properly? Did we close it, in the proper fashion? Was it a success for the employer, and was it a success for the injured worker, or did we just get the file off the desk? And I think that we need to start looking those things just from a societal perspective. And our program isn't suggesting that we need to, when people hear claim advocacy, they sometimes think that means we just have to pay everything that comes across the desk. That is not the case. Obviously you pay what you're responsible for and you deny what you're not responsible for. But how you do that, and we even have a class that's been produced, I think it's part of ATEC, isn't it, Mark, that actually talks about how to communicate with injured workers when they've been denied. That can help, control that process and the angst that's involved with that. In this day and age, that's kind of an important task to be able to accomplish because, there's a lot of weird things out there. We all have security guards and locks on our doors for a reason, right?
That's a really interesting point too, because what you're getting at is a little bit of how do we change a system that's so deep rooted in one thing, right? And that one thing definitely leads to success on some level, right? But sometimes we have to redefine what success is. And, for instance, right. I'll get questions from longstanding clients, and I'll say to them, you know what, you don't need me on this one, right? Maybe you can close it faster by achieving these 3 things and not using me. I mean, you're talking about a denied case with an employee who isn't represented. If they hear from me, I don't know if they're staying unrepresented, right? You know, maybe
probably not.
Right? Maybe if they hear from me and they say, "Who are you?" It's like, well, I have a law degree, and I represent
I may or may not
your
be
company.
an attorney.
I represent your company, and you know, so on and so forth. Yeah, and I think there is definitely a need for something like that because in a volume-based industry, not to say that we're making the wrong decisions, but maybe we're not making the most informed decisions when we're talking about how to deal with everything out there. So, you know, you got a training course. What would you say, guys, it takes for someone to be certified with your particular accreditation or you know, certificate? What does a person have to accomplish so that they graduate the college, right? Your WorkCompCollege, what do they have to do to graduate in your eyes?
It is a self-driven course, 64 courses across 9 schools. We have a general study section with a couple courses. Every course has a test afterwards, and these are not onerous tests, but we want to make sure they're getting the content, they're keeping the content. It's required that they have to have a 70% or greater on the test to pass the test. At the end, there is a final exam, which really comprises a lot of the same information or reviews they've already covered, and they have to get an 80% on the final exam. And then once they've watched all the videos in our system, we wanted this to be a legitimate system that meant something. This is a substantive program. About Mark, 51 hours worth of content over 64 courses. So you have to watch the videos. Our system will not let you fast forward through the lecture. If you try, it will stop you and say, sorry, you've only watched 4%. You have to watch the whole video.
I think attorneys know that very well with the CLEs, the continuing legal education credits that they make us do every year. Yeah, that is it. And to everyone who's listening, don't run away just because he said 51 hours or 64 courses or a test or a final exam. The competitor in me wants to take this test right now and see how good I am compared to what kind of rubric you're going to have. But I think that's just necessary in the whole scheme of things, right? A test not to tell you that you failed, but a test to tell you, like, there are ways we can progress. There are opportunities to learn concepts that are changing every single day. And again, a case handler versus an attorney, like, of course, I love my law degrees, right? Well, not my plural. I have a singular law degree, but ultimately speaking, the creativity that comes with approaching an old world problem with a new world solution, that's what I'm obsessed about, right? I don't want to do the same things every single day for the same type of structure. It just doesn't make sense. And I think that what you guys are proposing is actually what we do in-house here at Lois. There is nobody that is forbidden from recommending something. We have paralegals that say, like, I think we should do it this way. And all of a sudden, our reaction to that and our invitation to that kind of idea leads to more ideas, And that's exactly the person that, works for us and shows off the dynamic way that we can provide a defense. So I think that's really interesting. I don't want any of our listeners to run away just at the thought of a test, because we need tests. It's not gonna change anything. It's just gonna tell you more information, give you more data to succeed, because that's what we're all after.
Well, we would certainly love for you to embrace the program yourself. And what might be interesting, you could probably ace all the tests on the legal courses because you are an attorney or attorneys. The medical management, our deans are an Ahmed doctor with MD Anderson for 20 years and a behavioral psychologist for 45 years. you probably are going to need to watch the lecture and take notes in order to pass the test, because they're talking about stuff that's not really within your domain. Not that you're not smart, it's just that you've not gone to medical school, you haven't had those direct interactions. Similarly from humanities, we've got humanities that talks about emotional intelligence and talks about leadership skills and coaching and mentoring and different things. There's a lot of about claims. If you're not on the if you're not a claims examiner or claims adjuster, you probably don't know everything about claims handling that is going to be encompassed in the 11 courses taught by people who have been there, done that for 20 and 30 years. And so, honestly, I think some of the best test questions are ones that have all of the above, because it's an affirmation, it's a reaffirmation of what's important that they need to pull from that. We published 10 tips that we provide to each new student, and one of the tips was to journal. This is your idea. These are things that we want you to implement in your life. So get a notebook and write WorkCompCollege on the outside of it. And as you go through course 1, write your notes as you go through it. Course 2, our very first graduate printed every single transcript. It literally was a binder of about 3 or 4 inches thick, and she had her own notes, and she studied for the 100-question final exam. She was all into it, but she specifically said, I have changed how I have done claims. I have changed how I've communicated with my colleagues. I have changed how I've communicated with injured workers. She's been in the business for 20, 25 years, but what she heard through all these different curriculum and courses was something to go, I can do it better. And, to your point, it doesn't happen immediately. It doesn't happen overnight. This is a long game. We're not in it for the next 2 years. We're in it for the next decade, and it's going to take people that, are interested in doing it. Honestly, there's going to be people that are naysayers and they're not going to be interested in it. Those people are going to have to get with the program, because the next generation is not going to want to do claims like claims was done back in the 1950s, or when you put a fax number on your business card. It's just not the way business operates. It's not the way that individuals expect to be served, whether it's at the Dairy Queen or whether it's with their work comp claim. And so we feel like starting this and getting early adopters and people that are changing their culture, and then documenting the fact that they have gotten better outcomes. They've had their return to work is better. Their duration of disability is reduced. Their litigation rates are lower. The cost of the medical is lower. We anticipate that there's going to be some before and after stories that are going to be very compelling, and then it starts to become FOMO. That's our primary marketing methodology is FOMO, fear of missing out. We want to get people who are interested in doing this and document that they do it and get excited about it, become evangelists for us, and then it becomes this ever-growing community. But we're not in it for the short term by any stretch of the imagination. We know this is going to be a long game.
Well, that sound you guys hear is every one of my clients trying to figure out who this claims examiner is, who created a 3 or 4 inch book of transcripts from your courses, because I would imagine that someone who is that invested in their own progress is going to be the type of person that, maybe they might even come back to you guys in a year, 2 years, 3 years, because we know this industry is going to change, or this ecosystem. I gotta remember that ecosystem. When this ecosystem changes, maybe they come back to you guys and say, like, what has happened in the last 3 years that I can supplement my own knowledge. It sounds crazy, but I guess, as I say this with all the diplomas on the wall, but it's like, if you're not learning, you're not living, right? Mm-hmm. If you just stay in that lane and decide to say, this is what I know forever, someone's going to pass you, right? Someone's going to pass you eventually. And so I think that, continued education is very, very important. And just in case, that anyone is listening to it, you can always take something out of what someone is trying to teach, right? Even the bad professors, the bad teachers that you have in school growing up, right? Like, when you see someone trying to do something and trying to get better at their own craft, I mean, I'm sorry if this is sappy, but it's inspirational to me, right? Like, we're doing this all in our own space and trying to get better every single day. I say this all the time. Like, I think I'm the best in the world to do what we do, but it doesn't mean that I don't know or that I know everything, right? Because once I've decided that, I've fallen to the bottom. Right? I've already been passed by someone who wants to keep learning. So, Go ahead, Mark.
If you've ever driven in San Francisco a manual stick shift, you're either going forwards or backwards on those hills, right?
Yeah, those hills are not. Yeah, those hills are scary, to be honest.
They are not for standard transmission.
I can see, when I drive through the streets of Manhattan, I think I'm just as much of a pro as the Uber drivers and the cab drivers. But I remember driving in San Francisco like years ago, and I was like, I don't know if I'm ready for this. I feel like I'm going to hit someone with these hills. But you're right. I mean, it's a good analogy to say, like, okay, so you're going to progress, and then maybe you're going to feel comfortable, but then you're going to come back up again. So I think that's a really good analogy to kind of like end this, right? So I'll toss it to you, Bob, maybe for like a final word. If there's one thing that people should try to remember about WorkCompCollege so that they go to your website, so that they see what the courses are about, what's that one thing they have to take away from this?
The one thing is really that it is a purely community-driven effort developed by dozens of professionals and with input from even more broader people. We've listened to the input. We've really created a unique program that really doesn't exist anywhere else. And we believe we have a path that will lead to actually, we talk about better outcomes for injured workers and employers, but let's face it, if we can reduce the stress in the everyday job and make people feel better about what they do, it's better outcomes for the employees of workers' comp. And I think that's what we need to remember is we've got to create a better work world for our people to work in and exist. And I think we've got the formula for that.
Well, that's great. And so for you guys, Robert Wilson and Mark Pugh, thank you guys for coming on to the show. So on behalf of you guys, and to remind everybody here at home, my name is Christian Cison, and I'm reminding you to defend from day one.